I would use the word deja vu, but you don't know what I'm talking about. Only I know what I'm talking about. Only Adam knows what I'm talking about. You guys don't. So we're going to start over from the very beginning for you guys, making sure we get this down on track so you guys get to listen in. You guys get to take a peek behind the curtain. Now, if you're looking for the podcast, you're looking for the podcast where my wife beats me up for an hour, you're at the wrong spot. Click fast forward and move on. This is not for you. No. But if you're part of the situation where we all come together and we do interviews and we listen to interviews and we partake in interviews that are interesting, that are fun, that you guys can learn some stuff, yeah, that's what you got right now. That's where you want to stick around. So listen, what you got to do, go ahead and put the cat out. Let the dog in, dim the lights, pull the drapes, grab an adult beverage, and sit back in your easy chair, because now you're going to get to hear some stuff. You're going to get to hear from a guy who's the top of his field. And when I say top of his field, I'm not talking about he's the best guy on the block at kickball. No, we're talking one of the top guys in the. And now, if I tell you what he does, I'm going to get it wrong. I did that last time. I called him a blacksmith. Apparently, that was not what I was supposed to say. But as being a dumb mechanic in the middle of the desert, you'll get what I'm saying as the story unfolds. Adam, thank you for joining us again. Thanks for being here and carving out some time out of your day. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me back again.
Nobody gets that joke but you and me, but everyone else can understand what we're talking about. Now, before we begin, I said last time I used the term blacksmith, and that's too broad of a term, apparently. So I know that you create and bend metal and sharpen and refine and polish. I thought blacksmith was the right term. Why don't you give us the real definition so I don't screw it up?
So blacksmith is very all-encompassing, right? I think a traditional blacksmith, you think like fixing wagon wheels or just almost anything, you know what I mean? Not really a blacksmith's not going to be I'm not saying it can't be, but it's generally not an expert in one field. Like, it's not going to be a person that just makes blades or just makes horseshoes. You know, a farrier is a blacksmith, but he specializes in horses, right? And shoeing horses. So he would want to be called a farrier more than likely. In my case, I'm a bladesmith, right? So I have a singular focus. Like I am a blacksmith in that way, but I only focus on blades. Like, if you want me to make some scroll work or handrails, I'm not the guy for
Not the guy. Well, you got to think of it from a dumb mechanic in the middle of the desert point of view. If there was 12 of us all huddling, looking at you, we're like, well, the guy's a blacksmith. He can heat up and bend metal. Well, I don't know what he does with it, but he heats up and bends metal. Turns out really good. But that would be for any guy who does anything, different offshoots of heating up and fabricating. From our point of view, from being on the dumb side of the fence, we're thinking you guys are all blacksmiths. Well, with specific venues.
That is true. So yeah, you would call all those things, even like the guy I'm talking about that say is making handrails. Well, that's an ornamental blacksmith, right?
So there we go.
That's a trade to itself, right? So, blacksmith means a lot of things.
Right. Well, and just so you know, I am by no means trying to dumb down your profession. I'm just speaking from the guy holding the crayons on how I'm trying to describe it. But so before we get to where you are now, start us at the beginning, because there was a little bit of a road for you to get here. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Start working? Wife, kids? Let's kind of get us right to where we are, and then we can dive back into the profession.
Well, I'll just start right off the rip with the introduction. My name is Adam Miller, by the way. I'm currently in Pontotoc, Mississippi. It happens to be where I was born at, but it's taking a long circle to get back to here. I have a wife. Her name's Lisa. She works in the business with me. And until recently, my youngest daughter worked with us. She's moved on to something else and actually moved out of state. But we got 4 children. We got 2 girls and 2 boys. They all currently live out of state, much like I did when I was young. They're out looking for their place in the world. So we'll see how that works out for them. But as far as me, I was actually born not far from where I'm sitting at right now. I'm in Pontotoc County, Mississippi. My dad was a preacher when I was young, but still is today. He's still alive. But we moved from here when I was 5, 6 years old, something like that. He took a church, and then shortly after that, he decided to go to seminary, so we moved to New Orleans. Outside of that, we moved around a lot of small towns in both Louisiana at first and then Mississippi, where he was preaching and pastoring at churches. I ended up going to high school in Grenada, Mississippi, and it wasn't long before I moved out of there. But I didn't ever go down this road. So my dad is a traditional blacksmith, what you would call an ornamental blacksmith.
All right.
So he was preaching and doing that, and he did some other stuff. He was a radiator repairman. That's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
But so I had picked up, I'm not going to say I picked up a lot of blacksmithing skills from him when I was young, because it just wasn't something I was involved in. I really got more into the kind of welding aspect, and that's what I picked for a career, right? So when I was 18-ish, I started welding in industrial construction, made a pipe welder, and just traveled all over the country, mainly doing what we call cogen plants, cogeneration, gas-fired power plants, which would be turbines and boilers, heat recirculating boilers. I don't want to go down that road. We could take a whole day talking about that. But,
well, yeah, because I'm going to ask you I don't know what that is. Can you give me a quick definition?
So I worked in power generation, which is where the power is actually made at. So you would take a turbine that literally looks like a large jet turbine.
Right.
That spins a generator. It burns natural gas and spins a generator. But the exhaust, now you can just have that, and that's called a simple cycle. Built a few of those, but cogens are when you take the exhaust off of that jet engine or a turbine and pump it into a HRSG, HRSG, which is a big box with a lot of water tubes in it. You heat that water up to steam, and that steam turns another generator. So you almost get, I don't want to call it free, but free electricity off the back end of that. So actually powering two generators with one turbine.
I was just going to say, is that kind of like powering two off of one?
That's exactly what it's doing. You're using the exhaust to heat water and make steam. So you got an old style steam generator. And I say old just because steam generators they're obviously not old now. They're very high tech, but
but they've been around. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was kind of original form of power, right? It was a steam-driven generator. You have a steam-driven generator, and you have a natural gas-fired turbine generator.
And you were helping build those things. That sounds like a very exclusive area to be in. I mean,
Yeah, it's a very niche kind of thing. I mean, kind of learn when you get into construction, a lot of trades swap over, a lot of skills swap over. But my forte, my exact thing, so I was a pipe superintendent for a while, construction manager. I was even certified welding inspector for many years. But so went through all facets of that, and eventually through a long chain of jobs. And you got to understand, these jobs are generally, you may stay with a company for a long time, but you don't stay on a job for a very long time because you build something and leave it, right? So we would be in Florida and Washington or North Dakota or wherever. So always out seeing something. The last project I had was a project in Wyoming. I was working for a company out of Illinois called Sergeant Lundy. It was an engineering company. I was a construction manager on one of their jobs. And they ended up, they asked me to leave, and I got to leave involuntarily because I wouldn't take the COVID shot. But so that's what brought us back home to Pontotoc, Mississippi. Okay.
Ouch.
So that's kind of that long circle, is that we came back, and be honest with you, when I left Mark, I made a huge stink about it. Like, I did not go silently. And it really polluted the job market for me at the time, which has since subsided. I've been asked to come back to a few projects, but I've found something else to do that I like doing better, so I haven't done that.
But when you got back home, not a lot of steam generators back home ready to be built.
Yeah, so I came back home, and I just I'll be honest, so I lived with my parents, and in fact, until recently, and I think maybe the last time I talked to you, I was still living with my parents, and that was in early 2022 when we came home.
Yeah, we talked about family, being there for family. We covered some of that, yeah.
Yeah, so I was physically living in the house with my parents till I was shortly before Christmas, probably, maybe it was after Christmas. I don't remember, but until recently. But when I came home, I started back doing what I knew how to do, was welding, right? And I've got a rig truck here with a welder on it and all. So that's just what I started doing, and that's how we made it. I don't know, the first half year we were home or so. So in late 2022, I say late fall of 2022, September-ish, the best I remember. I had made knives before. That's been it was a hobby of mine, but not necessarily forging knives. So this is where I'll break down it. There's a lot of different kind of knife makers as well. So I would call myself a knife maker, just like I would call myself a blacksmith, right? So I'm a knife maker that's also a bladesmith. So a lot of the knife makers you find, they don't necessarily forge blades, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can make a blade just fine, not forging it. But forging blades opens up a whole different thing to you, right? Because you can make blades out of odd-shaped pieces and old pieces and different types of steel that you can combine and forge well together, and I'm sure we'll get into that. It just opens up a lot more doors. So in the past, I had been a hobbyist knife maker that was doing stock removal, which is just grinding a knife out of a bar of steel, essentially. So as I was here, I had actually a shop that I'm sitting in right now, and this is only part of our shop now as we built it up a lot, but this is a 24 by 24 garage. That's where I had an old anvil in here. It was my dad's. I had a forge, so I said, I like making knives. Let me start forging knives. So I started forging a couple of knives, and literally, Mark, I never advertised that. I never told anybody. A couple of guys stopped by a shop and started buying knives from me and told other people about it. And we've got what I would term a very successful knife business these days.
Well, back up for a second and tell everybody what the difference is between forging a knife and making one that's not forged. What are the two main ways you can go about that, so we know?
So I'm going to classify these two ways so you understand the terminology. There's forging a knife, forging it to shape, and then there's stock removal. So in a stock removal knife would be, say this is not a good example, but I have a bar of steel. It's actually aluminum, so it doesn't count. But right. So whatever I can get out of this dimension is all I can get out of it, right? So this is a very small piece of metal. I wouldn't be able to get much out of here, right? Have maybe a little tiny letter opener or something.
Sure.
That's where stock removal limits you. So you would want to work with, say, bar steel or sheet steel, and you can do that a lot of different ways. You can, say, cut it out with a bandsaw. You can cut it out with a grinder. You can literally just grind the metal away to shape. And a lot of I'll show you one of these models in a little while. This is one of our more popular models that we're making now. It's one of our everyday carry models. It's called a Razorback. But these blades initially, and I wish I had one here, initially that profile, that shape that comes out of it, like we order a sheet of steel, that may be like a 20 by, say, 2 foot by 3 foot sheet of knife steel.
Right.
So that silhouette is cut out with a fiber laser, right? So a lot of your work's done there as far as the shape of it. Then what you have to do is go back and grind the bevels into it, right? So you see from the plunge lines, you grind the bevels in, grind your false edge in, put in this jimping in or anything, your sharpening tool, you kind of touch things up. And there's a lot that goes into that. I won't lie, as far as symmetry and design and everything.
Basically, like you're talking about, is that you become restricted by the overall shape of the metal you start with.
Exactly.
You're not banging it out thinner and spreading it out wider. You're working with what you've got, is what you're saying. Like whittling it away, you can't make a ship out of a single piece of wood this big. Whatever you're going to make is only going to be out of what you started with. Am I right?
Exactly. So you're trapped by what that original dimension was, right?
Okay.
So you can get whatever out of that's inside of that dimension. Past that, you're out of steam.
Gotcha.
And then when you get into pattern steel, or what people are going to commonly call Damascus, unless you're buying Damascus from somebody else, which is somewhat frowned upon by most collectors, I'd say. And that's, I don't want to get into all that minutia. That's a whole thing there.
Well, we did that last time, because every pawn shop you go to, every county fair, there's some guy with a sign, and we talked about this before, that says, this is real Damascus steel, so you're going to pay extra for it. And you had to educate me on what that exactly means. So if you want to go through that again briefly, you really did have a good explanation for what Damascus steel, true Damascus steel, is and where it comes from, versus when it's mixed in where they call it Damascus steel.
So I'll say this. So that's one thing for a bladesmith. Somebody's going to forge it. It opens up this whole new world of making your own pattern steel. And I'm going to call it pattern steel to be very precise in what I'm saying.
Okay. So
pattern steel, exactly, like I say, what you would commonly hear referred to as Damascus, was taking different layers of metal, stacking those up. So here's an example, and I'll use this example throughout. There's a steel called 1084 that's very common. It's a carbon steel. It's used in a lot of knives, has been for a long time. And there's another steel called 15N20. Now, 1084 has no nickel in it. 15 and 20 has 2% nickel in it. And that may not sound like a lot, but in a steel, 2% of something is a lot. And what happens there, if you combine these two, say if I made like an Oreo sandwich that was 1084 with 15 and 20 in the middle, and I heat those together enough that they actually forge weld and fuse together, and then I etch the edge of those pieces of steel, like the outside of the sandwich, the crust. Yeah. What you would see in there is that the, say, ferric chloride that you etch it in, that you soak it in, it will turn that 1084 black, and it will not turn the 15 and 20 black. It'll leave it silverish, depending on there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But what you should end up with is jet black and almost a chrome look if you're doing everything right. So that's that's a very simple pattern, right? That'd be 3 pieces of steel. If you use that, you would then grind into it to expose that center layer, and that would be called sanmai, or three layer in Japanese, what sanmai means. So that opens up this world to where you can get into these things that are just extremely complicated, whether it's twist or ladder patterns or even random patterns, can sometimes that's where you just combine a lot of layers and let us do what it's going to do. You get a random pattern. Or you start working on mosaic patterns, whereas you get this specific shape at the end of a bar, then you end up cutting that bar into pieces and tiling it out. That's where things get really, so it shows your skill, and also those things get highly valuable to collectors, and it opens up this whole new market to you that you don't have. I'm not going to say you don't have it if you're just a knife maker, but you have to pay somebody else to do that. And if you're going to pay for especially mosaic Damascus, I can tell you, I've sold a few pieces of mine, and you're not going to get a piece from me for less than $500. You're not even going to think about it.
Just by your own description that you've explained to all of us here, is that a guy who's just gonna stamp or cut or whittle away from a block, that's not even in the same world as forging. Not even there's not even the same category, especially with what you're talking about. You'd have to buy something from you.
I do want to make one caveat there,
okay?
And this may be obvious. There are people who forge knives and people who only do stock removal, and I could find a person who only does stock removal that makes a knife that's 1,000,000 times better than that guy that's forging it does, just because you've got all levels of skill in both those aspects, right? So
right.
I would never say a guy that's, only doing stock removal on a knife is of poor skills, because that's just not true.
If I lent to say that, I didn't mean to, but it sounds like by your description that the forging is much more of the foundation of where the guy who's cutting away, that's a part that he doesn't get into. That's a part you're losing some of the aspect. There's things that you can do at forging that you can't do just by removal. Am I right on that? Like, you get to build it from the ground up.
Essentially the answer is yes. I would say this so I'm kind of a tradition history type guy. Like, I'm big on that. I'd say I'd go as far as to say like church, right? Like liturgy, like it's a big deal to me that tradition is adhered to. So know that you're talking to that kind of guy right now.
Sure.
And those things are important to me. So it's very important to me that if I'm going to say that I'm a knife maker, that I understand how knives were made before the 19th century, right? That's a big deal to me. It may not be a big deal to somebody else, somebody that's maybe a knife maker, especially hobbyists. They may not necessarily care about that. They don't necessarily need to. They might just want to make something that's a super high performance steel and has got, all the chemistries right and all the heat treats right, and they're really anal about that, and that's fine. You can make a great knife like that. There's a lot of knife makers out there that do that. I would say for me, it's important to not only have those skills to be able to forge things with a hammer and use fire and make those shapes and make, a little slug of metal that big and draw it into a fillet knife or even a sword sometimes, but it's also very important that you learn those stock removal skills so that when you go to finish those forged blades, that you have something that's, worth your time to forge, because that's oftentimes, Mark, and I obviously won't mention any names, but I see people that, they really get good at forging, but that's all they want to do, because I will be honest with you, that's kind of the glorious part of knife making, right? Is you're sitting here hitting this thing with a hammer and it feels very manly and you get this thing that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But that thing's not finished, though, unless you're doing, like, I could show you some brute to forge blades, and that's where you forge everything all the way in. You only sharpen the edge, or you only grind a little bit, and which I do quite a bit. I think that really demonstrates a lot of forging skill. But to be able to go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to ask you, is there a process in forging where you can make a mistake you can't come back from, that you got to?
Oh, I do it all the time.
You got to throw it out. You can't just keep reheating it and rebend it. I mean, is there a time when you're like, whoops, and there's a pile in the corner where you can't go any further?
I could put my meta glasses on and walk out here and show you a pile that will blow your mind. It's going to happen, man. And whether it's sometimes I'll give you a good example. Sometimes you're working with a metal, like I'll work with wrought iron sometime and use it as a jacket on a knife to make like a San Ma pattern, like I was speaking about earlier. The problem with the wrought iron is really trashy, so it overheats and crumbles sometimes. And sometimes you forget something's in there, right? So a customer comes up, start talking, that happens. Cracked blades are a thing. Like I have blades that crack every once in a while. It's very rare these days because I know my steel very well. I've been working on a lot, and at this point I've forged and made literally thousands and thousands of knives. So I've had a chance to figure out what I was doing wrong, but that's still going to happen from time to time because I'm not perfect, right? I might overheat something, or I hit something when it was a little too cold, or I got a cross section a little bit too thin before I quenched it. Like all these things can add up, and once you have a crack in a blade, like you're done. And I'm not going to say that some people won't try to forge that weld, but try to forge weld that, or even like weld it welded. I've seen people do that. People that are probably a little more unscrupulous than they should be.
Yeah.
Once you've got a crack in a piece of metal, though, and it's small enough, the knife itself is small enough that you can't just take that crack completely out of it. Like let me not say I'm done with that piece of steel. Like this isn't a scrap pile, right? Because what you end up doing, if you start trying to fight that, there's a couple things going on. When you start fighting a problem like that, you just start exponentially increasing your forge time on it, which, I mean, it's a business, right? You got to look at how much money you're making an hour. Right. You're not making anything there. And then by the time you get to the end of it, you probably don't have the best product. And then do you really want to put that in somebody's hand that's paying you, $1,500, $2,000, $4,000 for a knife?
Well, and they're gonna show it to everybody else too. I mean, it's an advertisement. Exactly. It's a badge you got to wear, good or bad. Once it's out there, it's a badge you got to wear that came from your hand. So I get what you're saying. You got to be careful about that too. It's reputation. So
exactly.
we had talked before. God, we bounced around on some stuff, and I learned so much from you. But there was we were talking about, there's certain blades that you make, there's certain shapes, there's certain things that's kind of your wheelhouse, your strength, what you're known for. And I've looked on your website and you can see some things out there. But I remember I asked you one time if there was something, we were talking about custom jobs when someone would come in and say, can you make me this? And what was the let me ask you first, what's the hardest thing for someone to ask you to make, the most difficult for you to time consuming and to get right when someone comes in and says, Adam, I need one of these. What is it?
So it's not the one of these. What the hardest thing is to do is when somebody asks me for something that's very custom and they want a pair of those. That's a very difficult thing. And not necessarily stock removal is fine. If it's not super custom, you can get that so close that you got to have a set of calipers to tell they're two different knives, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to forging, especially something that say it's Damascus or pattern steel or it's got some kind of exotic material, man, it gets so difficult to make a matching pair or something because you're dealing with a lot of patterns in steel. You're dealing with every time you hit this thing, it needs to come out just this look. And it doesn't mean that those need to look close they don't need to look the same under a microscope. But if you got two things in a box that say are a father and son set, or two brothers have got a set of something, and they need to look like the same thing, that gets for me anyway, it's very difficult because I really like I make a lot of culinary kitchen knives that are Japanese style. Man, I like having the liberty to I made that a little long. Well, that's cool. I hadn't made one this long. Let's draw that on out, make a 14-inch Guido or something. Or maybe I didn't use enough steel. I'm like, okay, a little petty chef's knife would be nice here. If I'm making a pair or something, like that's not an option.
I don't know how would you even consider making two things that look alike? I can't take a pen and draw two squares that are the same, that look the same.
So it gets difficult, right? You really got to watch what you make promises on when you tell somebody I can, like, if you want me to make two of these knives that we make all the time, yeah, I can make two of those. Like in fact, I probably got two made out here. I can just show you. When you come in and say, I want, a 8-inch Bowie knife, this ladder pattern Damascus with this handle and this pommel nut and this guard, and now I want a pair of those. I usually have to be honest with people, say, look, I can make you a pair of these, and from 10 feet, they're going to look like a pair, and up close, you're going to know whose knife is whose, right? Because it's going to be like a pair of twins. Like, you see a twin out in public, you may not know who they are, but if you see them together and you know those people, you know which twin is what. And that's what I try to tell people. And then there are things that just skill-wise, they stretch your capabilities, right? And thankfully, people still ask me to do that from time to time. It might be, one thing that happens is length of things, right? Maybe somebody wants a sword and you're set up to make everyday carrier hunting knives.
Sure.
It's just your equipment's not really, like, you're not set up to do that. So what you have to do, you have to kind of help your equipment along by picking up some skills you don't necessarily have right now. A good example would be this. I've got 2 heat treat ovens out here that we normalize, anneal, and quench knives out of. So they're 22.5 inches long, and I think I can actually fit a 24-inch blade in them, but they're rated at 22.5. So if I'm going to use those kilns to heat treat with, I'm limited to like a 24-inch overall blade length, right? And I can do a little magic and get a little bit further than that. But, I mean, for the purposes of this conversation, so if somebody comes in and wants to make a 4-foot sword, like, it just took my kilns completely out of the equation, right? I've got to go back to...
I was going to say, that's more of a dagger. That's not really... You can't really call that a sword if it's 24 inches.
Exactly. There are some short swords. If you said like I'm trying to think, Gladius or Kukri, I mean, all these are swords that are 22 inches.
Adam, if you're a man, you don't walk around with a baby sword like... True men walk around with broadswords. They're long.
Roman soldiers would take issue with you.
There we go. That's what I'm saying. Well, how would you?
So, my point is,
can you make something like that? But
what you have to do. So, I mean, for a long time, for first year I was actually in business, I didn't have a kiln out here. I was heat treating everything in my forge, out of my forge. You just had to go back to that, right? But that kind of goes back to that knife maker versus bladesmith kind of aspect. Most knife makers have never heat treated out of a forge because they didn't have any reason to have a forge, right? Well, I have a forge because I forge all the time. I can stick a long a blade as I want in it because it's got ports on both ends.
Yeah,
I can pass a blade through it. So even if I wanted to stock remove a 48-inch sword, and I wouldn't do that, mind you, because it would just be excessive amount of belts and work on me. But let's say I wanted to do that. Like, I could stock remove a 48-inch piece of steel and heat treat it in my forge, but I've got that skill because I started off forging knives, right? A person that's, starts off just grinding knives and never picks that skill up, they're limited by the dimensions of their equipment, period. Like, they're not going to be able to do anything over that unless they send out, and you could send it out somewhere, but as far as in-house, you're just not going to be able to do that. So that's the kind of things that would stretch you at times. Like, I love my kilns. I'm really used to my kilns, right? I've been using them for a few years now. I really like being able to put those things in there. I've got a program set on them. I touch a button. I go to sleep. I come back in the morning. Everything's normalized and ready to quench. Like, that's nice. Yeah. I don't want to give that up. It definitely makes it harder when I have to normalize out of a forge because a lot can go wrong there, especially if you're talking about a long piece or an expensive piece or something that's taking me 2 or 3 hours to forge. Like, I don't want to do that again. I only got so many, hammer hits in me. I'm human.
Yeah.
So there are things like that stretch your capabilities and what you're used to.
Now and then there's, I was going to say, we talked last time about a hatchet or an axe, small. You did something custom. Boy, you weren't happy about telling me that story, though, so you got to redo that.
Yeah, so it was a tomahawk, actually.
There we go.
So I had a guy, he's a crane operator, actually. His name's William. He hit me up one day and said, hey, man, I really want a tomahawk, but I want something really cool. And at that time, I maybe had made, let's say, 50 to 100 knives, somewhere in that range. I really thought I knew what I was doing. Like I was high on Adam. Okay. And I was selling knives really well. And I was just, the things that I was doing, like I was kind of in this little pocket niche of these knives, the style of knife I was making. And I still am. Like, I am really good at making those knives. Like, I got that dialed in. I can do it with a blindfold on, right? So I'm thinking, I can do this so well. I do everything so well. Like, there's nothing that's out of my wheelhouse. So as soon as he proposed to me, I just said, yeah, no problem. I'll make you, not only will I make you a tomahawk, I'll make you a Damascus tomahawk.
Oh.
At that time, keep in mind, I didn't have a press. To say that I didn't have any mechanical assistance in forge welding my Damascus. I had to do it all. So by hand, I made this guy and I had to make this billet several times. You'll understand why. I want to tell the whole story, but so I hand hammer like this 30-layer billet of Damascus and twist it. And what I'm trying to make is this tomahawk that's got a twisted Damascus spike on it that goes right through the eye and then comes out on the blade. Is the layers are all turned flat, so when you grind through them, you've got this Sam Mai look that's many layers deep.
Wow. And
in my head, that sounded really simple, man. It still does. I sit here and say that, and I think, how stupid, like, it was simple. So, I get this billet made, and the first thing I do, I'm twisting, I break, I go to hammer the eye out of it, like where the handle actually goes through, and I bust it wide open the first time. So I'll make another billet. I know to leave it thick at the eye this time, right? So get everything looking right. And I don't remember what happened to the second one, to be honest with you. It seemed like I had a crack in the actual blade of it or something. I don't remember. The third one, I'm just almost worn out by the third one. I make another billet of this Damascus. And keep every time I do this, I had to get 30 more layers of steel and hand hammer forge it, twist it by hand. And now I'm ready to start the tomahawk. Like I say, I don't remember what happened anyway, I busted the third one somehow. I don't remember what happened.
No.
So I just my ego is like, basement level right now at this point. I'm just like, because I see people do this all the time, right? And especially a guy named Rob Williams, and you can find him on any kind of social media as Mr. Death Machine. He makes a lot of this kind of stuff. And he makes it look so easy. And this guy I talk to all the time, he's one of those guys like, yeah, it's fine. Just do it. Just knock a hole in it. It's fine. Just hammer it. Yeah, just grind that out. One of those guys, like,
right.
Not a big deal. Like, why are you making this such an issue?
Because I'm not getting it. Something's wrong.
Yeah, because I'm retarded. That's why, But he didn't realize that at the time. So finally, I finally go get my dad. I'm like, Daddy, listen, I've taken on this project, and like I am not capable of finishing this. Like, I've got to have some help over here. So he says, okay, forge out another. I'll tell him what's going on. He says, forge out another billet. I'll come over there. And what I was mainly having trouble with was drifting the eye in it. I was having trouble centering that up and not getting this Damascus all distorted and cockeyed and everything else. So I actually had him come over and he helped me drift the eye in that tomahawk. And I finally got that thing like quenched and done and out of here, and it was beautiful. And I never want to see it again. And even when William sent me, he's got it hanging in his house, like it's a centerpiece in his home. And I will admit, it was very beautiful when I got it done. I gotta be honest with you, I've never wanted to make another axe or tomahawk. I just don't even care about it.
You don't even advertise that. You tell them, you don't tell anybody you can even do it.
Yeah, I don't do hammers. I don't do axes. I don't do tomahawk. Like, it broke me, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. So I've got no ego about telling anybody. Like, if you want a really nice tomahawk, I know a guy named Rob Williams.
I know a guy.
Hook you up with him. Yeah, he's great. Even my own, even the hammers that I use to forge, I have another guy named Michael Hoops make those. Like, he's a hammer genius, man. He's got it dialed in, and he makes all my hammers. I'm very happy about that.
You take your 3 broken ones and hang them up over your shop somewhere just to remember?
There's literally one still hanging out here. One of them, half of it was still good, so it broke the blade off, still had the spike on it. Some guy came by here and actually made a spike only tomahawk out of it, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that wasn't what the guy was paying me to do, right? So it didn't matter that it was cool. But yeah, for the and I had priced that too. I don't remember what I priced the guy for that. At the time I priced it, I thought I'm gonna make a good bit of money off of that. But when it was all said and done, I was like, man, not only did I underprice if I had done it one time, but I did it 4 times.
Yeah,
I lost my rear end on that,
Well, that's like I say, that's probably why you wouldn't want to keep the broken head of that thing anywhere to remind you. But don't worry, some idiot will come along like me and make you tell the story again. So you'll be fresh in your mind, Adam. Once in a while, there'll be some dumb reminder. Don't worry.
Oh, believe me, I've had a few like that, man. There's been and it's always, and even today, man, I'll go to do something that I think I'm really good at. Like I was telling you, I'm really good at making these knives. Every once in a while, I'll have one of these out here. I'll do something stupid too, and I'm just like, okay, now you're not nearly as good as you are in your head,
Right? Yeah, I think we all suffer from that. You in your area, you're kind of the big dog on the porch with what you're doing for that region. Do you run across people at trade shows or anything where you look at what they're doing and you know that they're just barely putting in the effort? Can you spot those guys a mile away? I'm sure. Do you run into them? You look at their stuff and maybe I'm not saying you chew them out or you say anything, but you got to be able to spot some of those guys who aren't putting in the effort that you are.
So I'll run into kind of two different classifications of, well, three, let's say that. I'd say there's three different classifications of people's skill level, right? There's guys that I look at, I'm like, he's a lot like me, or he's got some skill, some God-given skill, and then he's put in some time here, and he's really professional at what he's doing.
Right.
I see another class of guy that's had God poured him full of talent, and he's done all he could do with that talent. And I think I'll never be able to make anything like that guy makes. Wow. And then I see a third guy who maybe did or didn't have any talent. I don't know because he's not showing it. But they want people to believe that they're a knife maker. They want to, they've got somebody in their head they want to compete with. And I have people like that nip at my heels every once in a while. Those people don't last long, right? Because they're, you got in any industry, and I don't care what it could be a podcast industry, right? There's going to be guys that they sit here, they talk like this. And, why aren't you guys giving me money? Why don't I have any views? Why don't I have any? Well, because you're an idiot and a moron. Nobody wants to listen to you.
Yeah.
The same way in every trade. So, you're going to have that. In my mind, I know this because people tell me this. There are bladesmiths and makers out there that just think I'm the end all be all of knife making, right? And they look up to me. And as much as I appreciate that, I also realize how foolish it is, because I see, there are blade makers that I see that, like, I know, Mark, I'm never going to make anything like these guys are capable of making. Like, they're on another level. You know what I mean? So I think it's
I was going to say, like, you say that, like you opened up and you said it's true in every industry, and it's true, it is. But it's just, especially with the talent level you're at, God, you look at someone who's above you and go, how did he get there? You already know how hard your job is, and the talent you pour into it that you've got. And if you run across somebody that's a little bit above you or way above you, you almost have to wonder, where did you get that? Was there gold in your fingers? Because some things just look to me, some things look unobtainable. Like I look at what you're doing and go, there's no possible way with 50 years working side by side could I ever do what you're doing. I can't imagine you seeing someone and looking up to them and going, they do better than you do. But if you say you found that, how do they get to that?
You can go. I'll tell the people that are listening, if you want proof of that, go look up a guy named Kyle Royer, Royer, on YouTube. So he started making knives, I think he was like 11 years old, and he has done nothing but pour his entire life into knife making. And he'll make a sword that costs literally $100,000. Like, wow. I'm not exaggerating about that price. I've seen him make $100,000 sword before. And his level of skill, like attention to detail and ideas, are just like, they're out of this world. Now, I will say this. So because he's been in it so long and he's got that customer base that has that kind of stupid money.
Yeah.
He's able to take like 6 months of his life and just put into one blade, right? That's another thing. It's just not possible for me to do that. I don't have anybody that's going to pay me $130,000. Not today, anyway. Maybe someday. I'd like to dream about that, but
yeah,
nobody's going to pay me $130,000 an Adam Miller to make a blade today, right? My very most expensive blades are maybe a 20th of that, maybe 5 or 10% of that, right? And those are blades that really take my time that I have to work on for several months, a day or two a week to get those done. So he does have some. I don't want to say he's got no advantage over me, because when you're able to get one contract for 6 months and that pays all your bills and runs your company, Yeah, you can put a lot of attention into one blade, and that opens up a whole lot more possibilities. Having said that, he just, quite frankly, he does things, makes things that I've never even thought to make. Like, the thoughts never entered my head, so it's irrelevant of how much somebody will pay me to do it because I wouldn't even know to do it in the first place.
What is the most unique thing? Has there ever been somebody who's come in, and I'm guessing, for the most part, unless you're talking about movies and cartoons, a blade has a handle and it has a pointy end. But has anybody ever come in and said one handle, two blades, or one handle and they want a specific shape to a blade that's never been done before, and you have to start from scratch? Have you ever had to do anything like that yet?
I don't know about never been done before. I do have odd things, people, because there's a lot of trappers around our area, and those guys will come in and want some really odd blade shapes because they cape a lot of animals. So they'll want this weird, sickle-shaped blade with a handle that's inverted or something, and that's, I mean, it's cool, but not necessarily difficult. I'm not going to lie and say those things are difficult to make because all you do is forge a blade and then you wrap around the horn, and, you just got a curved blade, basically.
There's a guy. That's somebody coming in for something. They want it right, but they want it functional too. They're doing something.
Yeah, they're looking for something ergonomical, right? That works for their trade. I'll tell you. So nothing really comes. I'm not gonna say there's nothing out there. There's nothing's coming to mind right off the top of my head. I will say, like a few weeks ago, I made a wakizashi, which is a small katana essentially. So only yay long. I don't know. It's probably 30 inches long overall, but I made an Optimus Prime styled wakizashi. So it actually had an Optimus Prime guard that was engraved with the, Autobot logo on it.
Yeah.
And, it's got Transformers engraved on the blade, and it also was brute to forged. So you can tell it had been forged. Only had the bevels ground in very low. And we did a really cool two-handed handle. Those kind of things are really cool for me. I like that stuff.
Well, let me put it this way then. If you don't have something let's go to the flip side. If someone came in with a bag full of money, and what would be out there if you could shut down your whole shop for 6 months and you were going to get paid whatever you wanted to be paid for, what would you like to try to make? What's on your bucket list? Man, I'd like to make one of those before I die. If I could make a perfect one, what would it be? A big sword like that? Would it be something that's 4 or 5 feet long?
I mean, right. So some of this is not going to make entirely a lot of sense to you, but what I would want to make is a twist mosaic Damascus large katana. But so right off the bat, the amount of steel that would be required up front to make a single blade is fairly astronomical, just because of how much you lose with every time you forge weld something. And then to really make that blade to the quality that I would want to see it, you're talking months and months and months. But I mean, that would, I can't imagine that somebody would have the money. Somebody would be smart enough to have the money to give me that money to make that blade. It would require, that would be probably 700-800 labor hours worth of making a blade.
Well, that's what I'm asking is there'd be something on the Mount Everest that that
would probably be it, man. Yeah, that would probably be it.
Wow.
I think about that would be awesome. And I think about, man, that's just I don't even know if I got enough life left to do that.
You gotta rub your shoulders out with that Bengay so you can keep going. If on a project like that, you're gonna be there a while.
I'll tell you, I need to get a power hammer one of these days. And every time I go to buy a power hammer, I have the money to do it. And I think my shoulder will handle a little bit longer. I don't really want to spend 10 grand a day.
Yeah, well, you're talking yourself out of it, and you're talking yourself into an early grave there, Adam. Come on.
I hear you.
Well, so what's the main steak of you? What's your meat and potatoes? You got one of those? Is that the one you were showing us? Is that the?
So our and I could go back. So I'll tell you a little story about. Yeah. So you'll see this knife, but there's a whole kind of story behind this knife.
All right.
So this particular one I call the Razorback, RZRBK Razorback. And I'll tell you more about that as the story goes on. Essentially, I had a guy I used to work with. His name was Scott. He lives in Florida. He called me up one day and said, "Hey, man, I see you're forging knives. Will you forge me a little hunting knife? Just a little skinning, just something you can tote hunting." So I said, "Yeah." And actually, I can't reach it right now. It's actually in a glass case up there. Anyway, the very first one of these that I ever forged is up here in a glass case. He ended up sending it back to me after I'd maybe sold like 1,000 of these. So I forged him a knife, and when I got done with it, I was like, man, this is really like, I like this knife. This is a good size you could just carry anywhere. So I drew it out on a piece of paper, and I forged a couple more and kind of got the shape of it a little bit refined. And I said, you know what? This is when I actually started stock removing knives again. I had only stock removed knives until I started forging. Now, I forged that blade. I thought, this looks like it's going to become a business. I need a repeatable knife to make. Like, I need something that people can call up and say, hey, I saw one of your whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Can you make me one of those? So that was really our first, what I call pattern knife, right? And I called it a Hunter. There were probably, of what I call the Gen 1s of those, Generation 1, there were maybe 30 of those. And they're highly coveted by collectors now. Like, you won't see a Gen 1 hardly at all. I didn't sell many of them. The people that did buy them pretty much keep them in gun cases. Like, you're not going to find one out there hardly.
Right.
I made a few more of the Generation 2. Essentially on the Gen 1s, this back where this false edge is, it was completely flat. It didn't have any swedge at all. The Gen 2s actually cut a little swedge into. There's more of those than there are Gen 1s. You still don't see any for sale. Then the Gen 3s, they had a swedge and had little file checker and finger grooves back here, thumb groove back here. And then the Gen 4s had just about this full swedge, but all of those were made out of carbon steel. They're either 8670 or some of them are 80CRV2, just depending on what I had laying around shop at the time. So on our Gen 5s, that's when I went to only using the 80CRV2 steel, which is just a type of knife steel. And those got really patterned out. When I started the Gen 5s, I had a guy that put this shape or the Gen 5 shape into a CAD program. And I started having those fiber laser out of a bar of steel instead of me cutting them out here with a portaband or with a plasma cutter or whatever I was using at the time.
Right.
So that got the silhouette more consistent. Past that, I decided, hey, I want to do something other than carbon steel, because, of course, the guys are using them for hunting or fishing or whatever, and they're leaving them in their truck and they're leaving them in their hunting jacket. And, of course, any carbon steel is going to rust or at least tarnish. So the Generation 6 model started using a steel called CPM 154, which is a powdered metallurgy stainless steel. And I like those a lot. But what I didn't like about them, because of we had made those 63 HRC, which is a hardness level. I'm going to get us kind of esoteric things here. So I'd made those fairly hard. I really wanted to focus on edge retention and wear resistance for them.
Right.
They were a little chippy. If you banged your edge on something, not that the knife would break, but you'd get these little chips out of the edge at that higher hardness for that steel. So I started working with a whole lot of steels, and it was these crazy expensive steels and not so crazy expensive steels. And I ended up landing on this steel called Nitro V, which is now obsolete, unfortunately. There was a company in Germany called Buderus that made a steel called Nitro V, and it was a stainless steel that was based on an older steel called AEBL, which was a razor blade steel.
Oh.
But they added nitrogen to it. That's what it was called, Nitro V. And we used that. I think we called those Nitro Hunters because we used that steel. And because I didn't want to, so the next generation would have been Gen 7. And I didn't want to use that 7 moniker just yet. And I'll explain that in a minute. So we called those Nitro Hunters, and they were very, very, very popular. In fact, we still make a few today because I have a little bit of Nitro V steel left. But Buderus went out of business. They don't make any knife steel anymore. So we had to go back and find a different steel. And during our testing, we had used Nitro V. We'd used a steel called 14C28N. And we'd used kind of the original razor blade steel AEB-L, which is made by a company called Sandvik in Switzerland. So I went back and got more of that AEB-L, and with a heat treater, his name's Steve Kalari, lives in Atlanta. He was kind of testing on that, and he's a real heat treat guru. That's what he's into. He's into heat treat like I'm into making blades. So we really found out AEBL, I think up front, we didn't put enough time into it to really understand what that steel was capable of. And I'll be honest with you, the reason I didn't, the name doesn't sound cool. Nitro V, and that you think that doesn't matter, but it matters to a lot of people, right? To say something Nitro V, it just sounds like a really cool steel.
Yeah, it does.
It's easy to market. It's not so easy to market AEB-L. Nobody knows what that means,
Yeah, I'm with you.
ultimately, I decided, though, hey, this is a great steel. It works really well when you take it up to like 62 HRC and get them some of those higher hardness levels. Still got tremendous toughness, and it holds like a really fine edge. Because it was designed to make razor blades with, you can get just a laid back, really fine edge with it, and it was amazing. So that's what we ended up going with. But I wanted, because I had used that moniker of Nitro Hunter for the Nitro V for the last ones, obviously I don't want to carry that on because we weren't using that steel anymore.
Right.
And so AEBL was kind of like one of the original razor steels. That's why I ended up calling the Razorback, right? I wanted to tie it back to the steel, but also have a name that's catchy enough that people can remember what this knife is. So it's the Razorback. And we're going to make several models of that. This one's actually a Razorback Midnight. It's totally black. We're about to do one called a Recon that's got, coyote handles, like OD green Cerakote finish. So those kind of things, along with, so that's what pays our bills, Mark. We do knives like that. That's what pays our bills, and those are in the $300 to $400 range, give or take. I mean, depending on what it is. Also, and I've been carrying this knife for a while. Tesla, we're actually coming out with one. This was called a Viper, and it's like a pocket, small Tonto ring knife. It's made to pull out real quick. So we're trying to get into those kind of things that are kind of not only usable and ergonomic, but are cool, right? They're marketable and still make it out of good steel. Like this is ABL stainless steel. The one that's in my pocket I just showed you is Magna Cut, which is it's a highly desired steel. Now, whether that's got any validity or not, we could get into all that. There's a lot of hype surrounding certain steels in the knife game that I don't feel like are really all that great. Magna Cut is one that is a really great steel. It's got some hype behind it that people notice. So I was willing to use that.
Let's move to the end of your knife. How do you pick a size for a handle that's going to be, there's people with small hands, there's people with the big hands. I got fat hands. I mean, how do you decide on a shape and a size for a handle that's going to be appealing to everybody, that feels good, unless you did a custom fit for each person that said, hey, I want a custom knife. I could see you going the extra mile to do some sort of measurement or figure that out. But how do you pick something just for the every, like you say, your knives, your meat and potatoes that you give?
So there's two ways to go about that. One is just like you talk about a custom knife. First thing I ask you is, what's your glove size? Like, what size gloves you wear? Every man's going to know what's. Fortunately, I wear a 2X. So if the handle feels good to me, like, you're not going to have a handle that's too small in general, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I've got some fairly good sized meat hooks on me. So I'm not worried about somebody having a too small handle. Now, in something like this is what I call our production knives. That's a whole different thing. So what you're looking at something that, because people are going to carry this knife every day, you don't want something that's got an extra inch of handle, right? It'd be like having, you're carrying a firearm on you, it's got an extra 5 inches of magazine out of it.
Right.
Like, it's just not practical, right? But you also want something that works well. And we kind of know what that is, right? I'm saying as a knife industry, because as humans, we've been using knives for thousands of years.
Sure.
Like we've kind of figured out what those measurements are. Somewhere around 4 to 5 inches on an everyday carry is about right for most anybody. And it's kind of, I would say the same thing about a pistol. So, a Glock 26 is not going to fit very well in your hands just looking at you.
Right.
But you can shoot the firearm, right? And if you wanted something super concealable, like, you're going to give up some palm contact with that firearm, but you're willing to do that. Maybe. I'm not. Maybe you are. Or maybe you step up to something like that. You say, okay, I'd rather carry a Glock 17. It's not as concealable, but I can get a full purchase on that pistol. Yeah. And knives are the same way, Mark. You just kind of, and a lot of it's aesthetic too, right? You don't want this huge long handle with like a little 1 or 2 inch blade on it. It's just, that's not good looking, you don't want the same way. You don't want a short handle with a 12-inch kitchen knife.
You got so much to consider, Adam. I mean, there's so much that goes into what you're doing. We just, you can spend all that time talking about the blade and we're still not done. We had another 2 hours on that. And I just asked about a handle and you gave me more in 5 minutes than I ever thought there could be. I thought there wouldn't even be that long of a conversation about a handle, but you're right. I
could go even further. I mean, and I'll tell you, this is one of my big things. I've always said this. I tell young knife makers this. So if you take a knife, hoping you can see this, if you set that blade flat down, you can almost see how the back of the handle.
Yeah.
There's not much air I got the blade set down, it's barely below it.
Yeah.
You really want this line right here. You don't want this much below here, because once you start getting below there, you start getting something that is very unsightly. And it's one of those things you don't realize it until you see it. Like you get done with a knife, you're like, something doesn't look right here, but I can't figure it out. And it looks the same way if you pull that up too high. Now, that's just something you learn after time. It's like, hey, that knife looks good and that knife doesn't look good. Why? And when you start like measuring things and laying things out, you figure out, okay, like there's a certain ratio here that if I violate that, I've got something that just looks horrible. And that may be all right, right? You may have something like this ring Tonto I just saw. He's got a very specific use.
Right.
And it's just got to violate that geometry to work right, to be ergonomically correct. It's got to violate that. You can make that look right too, because you understand the purpose of it. But if you're talking about this knife right here, if you raise this handle up a half inch, I promise you nobody's going to buy that knife. And they're not even going to know why. They're just going to say that's not a good looking knife. They may not understand why.
Have you ever thought about teaching some sort of a class on this? Because you articulate stuff so well. You can explain all the mistakes you've made, how the form gets to where it is now, and what you're looking for with the finished product. Have you ever thought about doing something like that? Because there's got to be people that are willing to sit and listen and take notes. I mean, there really does.
So, I guess I've thought about that before. I'll be honest with you. Most of the people that think they want to know those things, once they get into it, they realize they really didn't want to know that much about it. They just they wanted to make a knife and say I made this knife. And because I actually talk about doing lessons out here, or like doing kind of a forging class, right? What we could maybe do on a Saturday, have 4 or 5 people forge a blade. But then I start thinking about it, like, how do you? Okay, you get people to come out and they pay you whatever, some nominal fee to come out and use your stuff, and you get them to forge a blade. Well, they still don't really have a blade. You got a forged blade. Well, then you gotta understand how to normalize it and anneal that and heat treat it. Well, do you do that in another class? And then you still got to finish that knife, and you got to put handles on it for it to be usable. Or maybe you just make a blacksmith knife, right, that doesn't have handles. It's just kind of forged into it, and that's fine. You still got to heat treat that knife, like. I mean, how far do you go with that? Yeah. And how many people that come to something really want to do all that, Well,
and keep coming back. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, it almost sounds like a shop class, like in high school. Like if you had a group of kids for a semester,
exactly. And that would be ideal. Yeah.
Keep taking them along every day of the week and showing it very slowly. But if you had them for a semester, you have them for months, then you can get them to a finished product. And just me. I mean, but that's almost what it sounds like, that to do that correctly, that's the kind of thing they'd have to sign up for.
Yeah, and there are some schools out there that do that. I'm not going to say that I know any that do that great, just because, well, I'll say this. I know of one school that does that. They do these classes where they do like a week or 2 class. Now, the people that I have seen come out of those classes are pretty piss poor hands, but that's probably the quality of people more than it is quality of the class. Now, I'd tell you how that is. If you took shop class in high school, So I took auto mechanics high school. I was an overperformer, right? I went and like competed in, I don't remember, Ford Quality Care Challenge at like Washington, D.C. when I was a kid. So I was really into it. Yeah. But the other 28 kids that were in my class, they didn't give a piss about a car, So, that's the problem is I don't know. I often ask myself, would it be worth it for people to do that? Because you don't want to sell people a bad bill of sale.
But like you just said, I think if I sum up what you just said about even just using yourself as an example, you get out of it what you put into it. If you had, you may have 30 kids in that class, 10 of them may really, they're going to put in the time and the effort. But the other ones, they're going to get out of it just what they put into it. Like you said, not necessarily a bad school or a bad class. It's just, the people, they don't have that drive to stay with it. It's unique. It really is. I can tell by listening to you. I don't have the patience to do what you do. Not only did I not have the talent, forget the talent. If God poured the talent into me today to do what you do, I don't have the patience to do what you do. I couldn't sit there and see as you're going along, swing by swing, where it's going to end up. I couldn't get there from here. That's something that's beyond me.
It's something you learn real quick, right? I mean, if you forge a knife, you're going to hit it thousands of times, just a single knife. So you start to understand very quickly, like how does this manipulate this steel when I hit it from this angle or with this pressure or this angle or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's you can learn a lot quicker than you think you can just by hitting on something. It doesn't have to be a knife. You just have a piece of steel to start hitting on it. Like, you start understanding, okay, this is what happens when I do this. And plus, you know, Mark, you can get on YouTube today and learn how to forge a knife. Like, if you really want to, like, you can sit. There are people who make videos of them doing nothing. In fact, I've got some on a Facebook page where it's nothing. It's just POV, no narration, me just taking a bar of steel, heating it up, and completely forging that knife, and you get to see every hammer hit. So, you know, most people can at least figure those things out enough to do it. And I'm not going to say they'll master it just because we're not going to master everything, right?
Sure.
Like, I don't have time to master badminton today. You know, I'm not that interested in it. Like you said, there are things that are very meticulous with this. Once you forge that knife, it's nothing until you finish that knife, and the finished quality you put in it very much determines the value of that knife. And I will say this, since I've come home and kind of been relieved of my last career and my positions and all that mess that I had, I have found a lot of, let's just say, grace and solitude. I'll put it that way. I've learned to kind of be by myself and alone with my thoughts. And that's something I've never had before. I've always been in a business where I was surrounded by people all day long, or I was responsible for a job site, or responsible for this schedule or that schedule. And we worked God knows how many hours a week, and missed a lot of my kids growing up because of that, which is a regret, but I can't go back to that, right? So I've had to learn a new way of life, but it's been I'll be honest with you, Mark, these past few years, it's just fundamentally changed me as a man for a lot of reasons. I'm just a different man than I was 4 or 5 years ago.
There is something to be said for solitude, and that's a great word for when you're working. People think, well, then you're out there alone. Well, you're not really alone. You're near your family. You know, you are in a small town. You have friends. You have neighbors. You know, you do see people. You're not all by yourself. But at the same time, until someone has gone from a corporate structure or even a shop where there's 30 people in a shop, until they've relied on themselves and been by themselves during that work cycle, you almost can't tell people what solitude and peace is like when you're doing something yourself. I get what you're saying, because I've had a little bit of that in some things I've done, but you're not wrong. There's something that changes you and makes you feel really good about what you're doing when you're doing it yourself. That is true.
Yeah, it's good and it's bad. I mean, there's bad. You know, that's why a lot of people don't open their own business. I was talking about this to a person yesterday. I said, man, I'd really like to open my own business. And I kind of probed him a little bit, you know, like, why do you want to do that? He said, well, I want the freedom of it. So we talked a little bit more. I mean, where we eventually got to, he'd like the freedom of it, but he really likes having insurance, and he really likes the fact that he's got a 401k, you know, and he really likes that there's a check that goes in the bank every Thursday night. You know, I will tell you this, I would have never done this had I not been terminated from my career. And when I say, like, I was terminated and blackballed, I didn't have an option. I would have went back. Like, I'm not too big to say that. Like, had I got offered a job, I would have went back in a heartbeat. Even after I opened this business for a little while, like, I wanted to go back. I was just sick of this. I was like, man, every day it was just, if I don't do it, it's not getting done. And I'm struggling each week to make it, and we still struggle today financially. Don't get me wrong, we have bad weeks, but you know, so I won't say I was forced into it, but for lack of a better way to describe it, I was pretty much forced into doing something on my own, and I'm very glad I was, man. Like I say, it's just you don't think about, if you're working at any job anywhere with a team of people, like, if you don't get something done, I guarantee you 99 times out of 100, somebody's going to help you pick that up. And I'm not saying you need to do that all the time, but things are going to get done. Yeah. Like, the bottom line is, dude, in this shop out here, if I don't do it and I come back tomorrow, it's not going to be done when I come back. And that's so there's a lot going on. Although I'm in solitude, there's like this rush of just all day long. We got to go back and do that. I got to do that.
Well, there's self-discipline that comes along with that type of work too. You gotta be able to discipline yourself and motivate yourself and keep going all on your own. You know, I mean, the other motivating factor is when the bills stack up. That helps you get motivated too.
Yeah, if you don't get motivated, the banker will help you get motivated.
That's right. Hey, Adam, where can they go? Tell everybody where they can go to buy your knives and check out what you do, because you're not going back to the corporate world, man. You're not going back to the teams anymore. You're making unique things one at a time, and there's going to be some people that want one. Where do they go?
Right now, you can buy this knife on our website at babymoonblades.com. We've got these up, and if you buy one, I'm not making these to order. I'm making these and selling them. So if you buy one, they will ship that day if it's before 5 o'clock. Like Lisa, my wife, she's our shipping department. Like if you send an order here, she's headed to the post office, period. Like we don't nickel and dime our customers or wait around to get stuff out. If you really want to check out my work, my videos, to see a more live look at things, look up Adam Miller or Baby Moon Blades on Facebook. That's where I post most everything. I know I sure probably post other places, but I just never have much of an Instagram or X following. So
no, people can find you, and I'll tell everyone listening right now, everybody paying attention, everybody's watching. Talked about going on YouTube and finding ways to do things, and one of the things that we all hate is we go onto YouTube to find something and they teach it to you wrong. They don't teach it to you the right way. There's somebody giving you some instruction. You have no idea if someone's giving you the correct skinny, giving you the lowdown. Well, now you know a place that will. I will vouch for Adam myself. I'm telling you right now, if you find one of his videos and it's any sort of instruction or giving you any sort of clue on something, it's right. Just take it at face value and go slow and watch it again. Now you know a place where you can begin with that stuff. He will not steer you wrong. Adam's not the type of guy who'd put out a video that's incomplete or incorrect. He's going to teach you what he's teaching you or show you what he's showing you. Now you know you're in the right spot. You can go there with confidence. I don't think I'm wrong on that. I'm not. I'm right. I'm 100% right. And I could probably find a list of 500 people that would vouch for Adam on just that thing. So that's the one thing you hate on YouTube. You have a way around it right here. Two places.
I appreciate you setting me up for the fall, brother. I really appreciate your time and having me on here, man. Yeah, I really appreciate your time and having me on here, man. This has been a wonderful second conversation. First for some people, good. But second for us.
Well, we're not going to share the first, and they're going to have to just wait in line. Adam Miller, thanks for taking time with me. I appreciate you. We'll get this posted soon for everybody. He gave you the website. He gave you the address. He even gave you some places to go look and poke around so you can see how things are made. Dabble in it if you want to. Thanks again for making time, Adam. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, you'll be good.
Now listen, you guys, that's the end of it. You guys are listening. I told you that this was going to be different. I told you this wasn't going to be my wife beat me up. I told you this was going to be important, and it was. This is the one. These are the interviews you want to be part of, not the one where I get beat up. These are the ones of substance where we ask questions and we listen, and we all walk down that path together. Hey, listen, I'm not sure where you guys are tuning in from, AM, FM, Sirius XM, or perhaps you guys are listening in on the Armed Service Radio Network. Remember two things in life. Number one, wherever you go, there you are. Number two, I'll catch you guys on the flip side. I'm out. I gotta go.